for inviting us to have this space today. So I'm really excited to hear Tom next when he follows us, because Elements represents a lot of what he is really passionate about, connecting kids with their unique passions and talents. So the whole field of hip hop and rap, and that's exactly what we're looking to do, is to build student leaders and to give them something that they value their lives for. So what is alarming to us is that originally we cracked into this field trying to make a difference on the front of the opioid crisis and be a mover and a shaker in the area of drug prevention. And what we learned as we stayed after this is that there are actually more students who are contemplating suicide than they are drug use. So what we can deduce from that is that by the time they get into using the drugs, saying these things to them like, this is so harmful that you could die from this, doesn't have the same influence as it would if they weren't already devaluing their lives, right? So we kind of see this progression of the suicide. And then the third element that rolls in is the issue of violence. So what we see are that our teenagers are suffering. They're suffering with depression and anxiety and life stress, and so they're taking one of three routes: drug abuse, violence, or suicide. And we're seeing these issues on the rise. And so HEAT is coming in, and what we know, we started running focus groups with the teens to ask them what kind of a program would be effective for them. And what's really true about today's teens is that they are part of Generation Z. Every generation has a label. There's the baby boomers, Generation X, the millennials. So today's teens are part of Generation Z, and they actually have the nickname the Golden Generation, because they're expected to be the ones to turn the tide on these issues. And what we know about teenagers is that they are always more receptive to what other teenagers have to say than what adults have to say. And so we know that if we want to reach teenagers, the way to do that is through the teenagers. So we're all about empowering the teens to be leaders themselves amongst their peers. And we're encouraging them to pick up this torch, to really embrace and own this label of being the golden generation, and for each one of them individually to play their role in making sure that they live up to that and really changing the future for the good. So one of the other unique qualities that's like a hallmark of this generation, Generation Z, is the role of social media in their lives. So when we polled the students, we were with them in the focus groups and asked them what channels of communication would be effective in reaching you. And it was bar none social media. It was Instagram and it was Snapchat. It wasn't even Facebook. The Facebook is kind of out for these teenagers. It's Instagram and Snapchat is where they communicate with their friends. And so really quickly we had to take kind of a crash course in learning this whole landscape of Instagram and Snapchat. But we really employed the teens to be co-creators with us. So from the very beginning, as we've been establishing what HEAT is doing, the teens have been an integral part of what we're creating, so that we make sure that we're speaking their language so that we're going to be effective. It doesn't matter how phenomenal our message is. It doesn't matter how passionate we are about it if they don't have the ears to hear us. So we had to learn what their ears are going to hear. And all of you have some HEAT cards, which are a big part of what we do in meeting with our teens. You can see I gave you 4 because there are 4 different messages on the cards. And what I really want to draw your attention to on these cards as sort of evidence of the signature of the teens helping us build this program is the little Snapchat. It's the, you might not even recognize it or know that it's a Snapchat icon. It's the little white ghost with the yellow background. And believe it or not, this is not just a picture. This is actually a piece of technology. This is called a snap code. And so this card is a living, breathing piece of technology. All of the teenagers who have the Snapchat app on their phone, which most of them do, just scan this code with their phone and they instantly capture our organization as a part of their Snapchat network. So it's really amazing. Today's teens, they're very digital. They don't like to have much in the form of paper. And so they've helped us understand that by placing this code on our heat cards, it becomes a permanent part of their library, their database, and their phones that they take with them everywhere. So they're not likely actually to hold on to these cards. These cards are likely to hit a receptacle somewhere. But in the meantime, we've captured them in our network, and they have this information that they can go back and refer to and share with their friends. So even though we give them stacks of cards that they can also physically share with their friends and with their classmates to disseminate this information, they actually, the most efficient way is for them to snap it into their phone and then share it through their social media networks. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that the world is working this way? So that's how we're utilizing the teens to create what we're creating. The other main players who I really want to place an emphasis on, because I just feel so proud of our ability to collaborate on the front end, not only crossing these generation divides and collaborating directly with the teens, but we're collaborating with the professionals and the adult leaders in this landscape to make sure that what we're building is approved by them, not only approved but endorsed by them. So a couple of the members on our advisory committee is Dr. Lakshmi Samarko, who's the Hamilton County coroner. She also has teenagers herself. And Chief Tom Simon, who's the Chief of Police in Newtown, but most importantly, he's the co-founder of the Hamilton County Heroin Coalition. So he's pretty steeped in this. He's on the streets with it. Dr. Samarko and Chief Simon, they're on the streets with what's happening. And they have been an integral part of what we've been building as well. So they're both busy with their jobs, but we've listened to every word that they've said. And so if they were building a nonprofit for teens, essentially we've built in those elements that they would want to see. So that's what we are doing. So to date, this number actually is in the 80s now. We have over 80 registered HEAT student ambassadors, and we're working with 27 school districts. And what's remarkable about that is the diversity. So again, something that I feel really proud of us for doing is really working to cross these racial and cultural and economic divides. So once a month, we pull together our teens in a location, and we have teen leadership summits where we talk about the information that's on the cards. They have an opportunity to collaborate amongst themselves where they can share with each other in their language about what they could do to really step it up as teen leaders in these arenas so that we can see a reduction in the amount of deaths through suicide, violence, and drug abuse. And when these teens come together, it really runs the spectrum. So although we have Cincinnati Public Schools represented at our teen leadership summits, we also have schools that are rural, like Goshen. We have students from Goshen who attend the summits. We also have schools like Don Community High School. They have representatives who come to our summits, and that's like a high school. It's a remedial high school, as well as students from Withrow and Norwood, and a whole host and Woodward High School as well as a whole host of private schools. So we have Ursuline and St. Ursula and St. X and Roger Bacon, Cincinnati Country Day, Seven Hills. So you can only imagine, just through labeling those schools, the amount of diversity that we have in one room. So these students are actually learning so much from each other about their own communities, their own neighborhoods, what each school is doing that they consider a strength that they can see is working really well to reduce the instances of bullying and to increase a sense of social safety. And they're talking about this with one another, and they're breaking down those divides of misconceptions about where they each come from. We're working closely with the Boys Hope, Girls Hope organization. So the Boys Hope, Girls Hope scholars who actually are living in the Boys Hope, Girls Hope houses because their home environments are not conducive to them getting the kind of grades that they want to be able to get in school. They're a part of our organization. So I'm just so proud of the type of diversity. Here's a picture from one of our first leadership summits, and we've just continued to grow from here. I love the faces of these students. You can see this is one where they're kind of goofing off. Okay, and this is an example of our heat cards. You can see that, but let's just go over these real quick for a second. So what many of the teens do not know is that many drugs are laced with fentanyl, and fentanyl is super addictive and it's super deadly. So we try to make sure that they know so that they can tell their friends and everyone they know that if they're considering engaging with some kind of street drug, that chances are they are not going to be taking what they think that they will be taking, because this instance of fentanyl is absolutely deadly. Hepatitis C, we have a doctor, a physician, an internal medicine doctor on our advisory committee, and he shared the story with us of a young woman coming in to his clinic or into his office rather, and she tested positive for hepatitis C, and he was going over her history, and there was no drug use, but it turned out she had had sex with a boy who had done drugs, and so we want to make sure that all of these children know how to keep themselves healthy. We already heard the story from Bob about the pill parties and heroin, that it only takes one engagement with heroin to be addicted, and we really want the teens to know this. This is just another picture of our student ambassadors. You can see they're working with our Snapchat card there. This is a picture of the Boys Hope Boys, who've been really instrumental in building what we're doing. This is one of our student ambassadors who came on the radio to talk about heat. So as much as possible, we try to get our teens out front talking about what we're doing as opposed to the adults. This is an example of a Snapchat takeover where they take over our Snapchat account and they post out to our social media base the fun things that their school is doing that are healthy and community service driven. This is a canned food drive that Ursuline Academy did during Spirit Week, and they did a Snapchat story during that time. This is one of our leading ambassadors. His name is Isaiah, and through the route of karma points he earned tickets to a Reds game. And I thought that he was going to take one of his buddies, one of his friends, but he chose to take his little brother because he said his little brother had never seen a game and didn't know when he would ever get to a game. So we're excited about those kind of success stories. This are some examples of the many organizations we're working with. This is a letter of endorsement from Chief Simon. The Three Rivers School District Superintendent is so we make sure that the educators are behind what we're doing. And these are some of our social media extensions. So thank you so much for giving us this time. I know at this time I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and then we'll be ready to field some questions. Thank you.
Thank you.